You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. The Little Opera Company presents American composer Jake Heggie's 3 Decembers, 3 days at the end of May at the Manitoba Theatre for Young People. As noted in the Wall Street Journal, Heggie is arguably the world's most popular 21st century opera and art song composer, and this production marks the Canadian premiere of his 2008 work. To learn more, I'm joined by director Rob Harriott, music director Naomi Wu, and member of the cast Lara Tukevich. Welcome back to Classic 107. All lovely to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Rob, let me start with you. December, the holidays, a time when families often get back together. It can be a joyous time, but it can also be a time when family drama might come to the surface. Without giving too much away, would you mind telling us briefly about what's going on in this opera?
It's the story of the dynamics between a famous Broadway star and her two children. One, a boy and a girl, and they're grown up. One lives in San Francisco, the boy lives in San Francisco, and the young woman lives in Hartford. And they're connected by her Christmas letters that come every year, and they basically rip them apart because she is self-centered, but these characters are also well thought out and dynamic that you can't paint them with one brush. So it really is about the family dynamics between the three of them and how their lives are evolving, some not in a great way, and how they deal with it and how they get through it. Just like every day.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to say. I mean, for you as a director, it sounds like there's a lot of fodder here. You just get to dive into the human psyche. Is that a fun opportunity for you to explore the world of these various characters?
My favorite thing in the world to do, because it's dealing with the psychology of a character that dictates everything that goes onto the stage, right? And that every decision is then made for you. If you look at how a character is made up, how they think, what they want, what they don't want, what they're hiding from. There have been times when working on this opera for a couple of years now. I think Lara and I were talking about this morning. We were texting back and forth or yesterday, about there are moments in this opera where the opera is actually saying something that I wasn't ever able to put into words in my own life. So I would be walking in the park listening to this, and I would just start crying, just because it said, and from that came this beautiful catharsis of all the stress and sadness that I may have been holding on, was just cried out.
I think that speaks to the work itself. I mean, this sounds entirely relatable. Like, we're not talking about a journey to the underworld or a trip to Valhalla here. Like, this is stuff that people have experienced in their everyday lives. So Lara, let's talk a little bit more about that. Tell us about the role of the character that you'll be singing, B.
So Beatrice is Madeline Mitchell's daughter. She is the eldest of the two children. She herself is also a mom and married when we meet her, and her and Charlie have her brother, have a pretty strong relationship. But for B, I think because of her place in the sibling relationship, and because of what her mom has done, and they have been alone for a lot of their childhood, I think she was probably forced to step into a more mothering role from a very young age. And so for me, as I go through her journey through these decades, I keep seeing these moments in her of her really searching for her mom's approval and really wanting to be truly seen for, like, just being her, not, all the things she has had to do either for her brother, her family, et cetera, just to really be seen as a person of value because she's a human. And I think it's one of the things that she continues to search for from her mother in various ways. And then because we learn that they lose their father very young as children, that there's also this hole in terms of her life story that she's searching to fill and to understand, and what that means in terms of who she is as a person. And also what it means in terms of how she lives through her life and what's easy for her and what's really difficult for her.
I think what's really fascinating about the way that this opera is presented is the format. I mean, it's 3 Decembers, as in 3 Decembers over 3 different decades. So we, as the audience, we get to follow Beatrice's journey as she progresses through her life. We're not talking about a weekend trip here. It is over decades. How does she change over, like from the beginning of the opera through to the end?
Good question. In some ways, it's like she almost doesn't, because of how I think she really doesn't ever get that approval from her mother, and the story of her father and losing her father, how that has affected her life, I think in some ways just puts a complete stasis over all 3 decades. What I find fascinating, though, is how she alternates between being supportive of her mother, and then being supportive of her mother to her brother, and then being supportive of her brother to her mother. And so then sort of like rejecting and having a conflict with her mother because of her relationship with her brother. And that tension and release, and where it finally comes to a head in terms of her getting so close to saying what she actually wants and needs and still can't do it. And she's almost able to do it at the very end, but in some ways it's still an unresolved piece of her life, and you kind of go like, wow, how do I do that in my life? Do I do that in my life? And, you know, how do you move forward in those moments of your life?
Yeah, family dynamics at play, and you know, those personal struggles that, you know, it might be tough to say something to a family member, even though you want to say it, you can't for one reason or another, and that's all going to be in display in this over 3 Decembers, the Jake Heggie work. Naomi, you of course are assistant conductor at the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, where you don't typically get to indulge in your operatic baton waving skills, but this is something that you're going to be doing more and more of, especially as a recently announced conductor in Tapestry Opera's Woman in Musical Leadership program. First off, congrats on that.
Thank you, Simon.
What an exciting opportunity. And we're going to have you back on to chat more about that. But first, let's talk about this opportunity with Little Opera Company. What does it mean to be involved in this production for you?
Well, what I always love about opera is the rehearsal process. It's what's so different about opera in comparison to a symphonic performance is that in opera we have lots of time to delve into text and story with each other, with this incredible team that you have here, Rob and Lara, and of course all the other wonderful collaborators and creatives on this team. In this case, we've had perhaps a little bit more time than maybe we would have liked to delve into the specifics of this opera, because this was supposed to be performed 2 years ago and then again several months ago, but it is finally happening now. And so I always love that. And I would say Jake Heggie, working in close collaboration with his librettist, Scheer, a librettist with whom he had a very important creative relationship, and also working from text by the incredible playwright Terrence McNally. That's where this original story comes from. This is an incredible story to get to delve into, and it's a story in which the relationship between text and music is so beautifully and carefully thought out. And so that's what I'm really, really looking forward to doing over the next couple of weeks.
I was listening to an interview that Jake Heggie gave about this particular opera, and he talked about how understandability is just so important to him as a composer. Can you talk about how that manifests itself in the music? I'm thinking there's just 3 cast members on the stage, but there's something like an 11-piece ensemble playing. Is that right? How does the understandability play out in this work?
That's right. It's an 11-piece ensemble. The ensemble actually has 2 pianos, and I play one of the pianos. So I'm both conducting and playing. This is really typical in musical theater, for example, less typical in opera. But I think Jake Heggie writes in a style that really actually blends those 2 genres. And the other thing I would say about his understandability is the melodies feel both so familiar and so original. There are songs in this arias that make me cry every time I hear them, and they feel like you've known them forever. And yet the harmonies are so inventive and clever, and the sonic world is so rich. And he has a real knack for that.
Well, yeah, like you say, this just sounds like a pretty ideal 21st century opera, in that it is relatable. It is in English. It is a digestible format in terms of its length. We're not talking about a 4-hour sit down and part of a longer cycle, a la Wagner. This is totally manageable. And I think kind of the last question that I have here, Rob, is this is the Canadian premiere of this work. So let me ask you, I mean, COVID aside and Little Opera Company's kind of delayed production, what took so long to get this opera performed in Canada, Rob? Do you have an answer to that?
I don't have an answer for that, because if you talk to people in the US, like companies that I deal with there, they're all over it and have been all over it for many, many years. I think there is, in our case, there was a question early on whether or not some of the language that was written into the show, there was a bit of trepidation about that. And I think I said, if we have to change some of the language, we'll talk to Gene Scheer, and just to temper it a bit. But I honestly don't understand, other than I think there's a misconception about new opera, that it's, as I said in one of my videos, it's cacophony or discordant music. And this is, Heggie is a genius, because in all of his works, he takes you down one road, and then before you know it, you're ensconced in this melody or this ensemble or this texture of music that literally is saying something that you didn't have the words for. And he's a genius.
He certainly is. Rob, Lara, Naomi, thanks for taking the time to chat with me on Winnipeg's Classic 107 today to tell us a little bit more about Little Opera Company's production of Jake Heggie's 3 Decembers. Very exciting, and certainly some dates to mark on the calendar. Thank you all.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Simon.
And you've got 3 little opportunities to check out the show. Also, I definitely cannot take credit for that joke. That is totally a Rob thing. I saw it in one of the videos, or maybe I just misheard what you said in the video, but it's great. Anyway, yeah, it was a great joke. Anyway, little opportunities to check out Little Opera Company, May 27th through the 29th at MTYP. For more tickets and details, visit littleopera.ca.